Now we are going through the next session that is indeed about the potential of living labs for food system transformation. And of course, it's going to be a session that is key, and we are very, I think, proud also to be presenting this. I'm Elisa Porreca. I work as food policy officer for the city of Milan, and I'm happy to see the participation overall to the event, but also to this session. And I will leave the floor for the setting the scene to Andrea Patrucco, but of course we will have different speakers today with us. We have the great opportunity to have Rosalinda Scalia, that is Deputy Head of Unit on Bioeconomy at the DG for Research and Innovation of the European Commission. We will have the participation of two cities showcasing their results. So Helen is representing the city of Birmingham, and Natalia Boitot is representing the city of Warsaw. Andrea, as I said, will be setting the scene, and also Thom Achterbosch, representing Wageningen University and Research, speaking about data and the biggest challenge when implementing actions. So, with no further delay, I let the floor to Andrea for the setting the scene.
My name is Andrea Patrucco. I am the project manager of Food Trail. I'm supporting Andrea Magarini as coordinator in working together with all the cities, all the researchers, all the partners in Food Trails. But today I want to speak not just as part of the project team, but also as municipality, as a city officer. This is the perspective that we want to present. This double role as municipality and leading a project, I think, is creating a new perspective that is really interesting in managing a project like this. Today, my presentation will start from the fact that the 11 living labs that we implement in the 11 cities is what the European Union wants to implement at the local level as a fertile ground to produce new pilot actions, concrete actions that we need to prove to our colleagues, our decision maker, our citizen. This is what's in local level we need to activate. The living labs are the testing bed for the urban food policy. We need a testing bed for decision that will be taken at the urban food policy level. And we are under the umbrella of the Urban Food Policy Pact. So in the living labs, we are moving through the different 6 categories that was mentioned this morning widely by all the participants. What we intend to present today is the fact that the living labs is the place where we can start from the design of the actions, passing through the implementation and monitoring the effects of the action that we put on the ground in our cities. The cities lead the processes. This is quite clear that we have on our hands the opportunity to change our cities. That's why we need to speak with experts like researchers, but also the cross-cutting manager that was mentioned in the previous session. So there is no living lab without stakeholders. We need to engage stakeholders to be actively engaged in our activities. I want to now have a simple game. How many here from you are from a city? Please raise your hand. Okay, a lot. How many of you are part of the research world? Okay, less than cities. How many of you are NGOs, representatives, third sector, other? Okay, less. This is a very simple example, but now I have in mind who I have in front of me. Okay, this is what exactly we need to do locally as cities. We need to understand who is in our group of stakeholders. That's why we organize our activity of stakeholder mapping, supporting all the city to understand who is in our group. So the example of Milan that we have, for example, 17 local stakeholders engaged on the total 179, so more or less the 10% of the total engaged at the project level, divided in different groups. And just seeing this chart, you can see that, of course, private sector, circularity, and waste are our top priorities from the stakeholder. And we not just know who is our stakeholder, we need to know the interest, the power of that stakeholder in our group, independently if we are working in a food council or in a non-formal group of engagement. That's why, for example, in Milan, we decided to work in circularity. And we have a dedicated publication in how to engage stakeholder under the Work Package 2 of our project that is possible to download and was previously approved by the Commission. Then, if we are moving from stakeholder mapping to how to transform an idea in a concrete action, we need concrete and structured approach to understand how to ask our stakeholder to co-create together with us the idea in an action. That's why we use widely, not just with the food trail cities, but also with the Cascade cities, with also other cities around the world with the support of the Milan Food Policy Pact in other occasions, the Food Policy Action Canvas, that I can say is one of our key tools that we develop, is a really simple tool that is trying to translate what is an important food-related policy area in concrete policy actions. How is it working? I can say that we can start from a value proposition. We have to understand what are the food policy needs, then move to who are our beneficiaries and stakeholders, so citizens, communities, stakeholders that we want engaged from the private and public sectors. Then the third point is more on what are the hands-on activities that we have to create with them. Okay. What we are asking you to do with us, so the actions, the activities, and the relationship that there are can be the win-win situation that we can create together. So creating the food policy action ideas. And the last stage of this work is develop food policy action beyond our ideas. So identify barriers and drivers that are under this discussion. To give a concrete examples, we hosted during our Cascade learning process that is described in the upstairs session, the ex-Marseille Métropole during our activities. And after 3 days of activities, in 15 minutes, and I can prove you, just sketching on a table, we identified an idea that can be activated locally in ex-Marseille Métropole. Of course, the person that was engaged was not just participating at the visit. We organized a really complex exchange learning program that starts from individual calls, group calls, and of course webinars and other activities that you can find also in the handbook that is presented by Wageningen upstairs. So this morning Andrea Magarini saw this 31 actions as one of our main activities. These activities were organized based on the use of the Food Policy Action Canvas. So through the use of concrete tools, we arrived to 31 pilot actions that were organized in a process, different topics, different typologies of actions that, of course, as I mentioned, are under the umbrella of the Milan Food Policy Pact categories. But moving from the idea to monitoring the evolution, the implementation of our actions, we organized structured support by the Wageningen research and other collateral researchers that participate in Work Package 4 on how we support cities in understand how the idea can have an evolution from the first step that we move through the Food Policy Action Canvas through the methodology of the theory of change. We have also a dedicated publication on this with the 11 paths that were organized by the 11 cities, and is also available on our website. Just to give an example, in Milan, as I mentioned before, if you remember, our stakeholder was more focused on food, on food circularity, on food waste. So our decision, also passing through the Food Policy Action Canvas activities, was to identify an impact through the theory of change that is focused on the improvement of circularity in school canteen system in Milan. All our activities start from the idea to have an impact on a specific priority of our food policy. Moving from the impact to the outcomes, outputs, and activities is what the theory chain help us to understand the assumption that we need to ask us and transform it in sentences that can be a good monitor to monitor the evolution of our ideas. This theory chain can be done in different moments of the implementation of our activities. Filippo Gavazzeni before mentioned how we work with indicators, because combining theory of change with indicators is one of our solutions. We start from a really long list of indicators. Cities need support to understand how I can monitor the impact that I mentioned in our theory of change. So we start from the long list of the indicators of the pact, 45 indicators, more than 200 in other indicators of the RUAF, and we identify specific indicator for each cities. In the case of Milan, to continue with my example that was also mentioned by Alice Casiraghi before, in which we refurbished some canteens, public canteens, as test bed, without saying nothing to the kids and to the teachers. We, during the summer, when the schools were closed, we refurbished these schools, and we transformed the space from, I can say, from an ugly space to a very nice space, as you can see in this design. And we identify specific indicators to prove how was the food waste before the activities and after the activities. So in May 2023, we had some weighting of the food waste, and after, in September, October 2023, we observed the change. And this is one way in which we are proving with a number. On the other end, we are also analyzing from the percentage. So we are combining different indicators to prove the results. Why we need to prove the results? We need to prove the result not just for the project. We need to prove our results for my vice mayor, because we need to prove the fact that our result can be a good way to use the result for new activities. For example, the decision to invest more in new school canteen that can be renovated in the next year. That's why this, for us, is a good example. So, just to conclude, you will find everything in terms of details for in the final publication that was mentioned this morning. Is available both you can download it and you can take a copy here. And I want to thank all the participants, not just my colleagues, but also the cities, because half of this document is focused on the pilots and activities that all the cities managed in the last 4 years. Okay, and I conclude my intervention, and I have just a gift for open the discussion, because we want to present you a video that for us is another alternative way to present results in comparison with deliverables and written stories. So we choose Funchal for different reasons. So enjoy the video.
Located in the Atlantic Ocean, stretched along a hillside that goes from the sea level to 1,800 meters altitude, Funchal is the capital of the autonomous region of Madeira, Portugal. Vineyards and banana plantations frame the island, accompanied by subtropical fruits and many flowers cultivated by the citizens. Gardening, in fact, represents the most authentic soul of the city. Over the past years, Funchal has been very committed to environmental issues. However, there was a need to establish a connection between these efforts and food sustainability. The participation in the Food Trails project allowed the city to empower and train the population in making more conscious choices, stimulating healthier and sustainable lifestyles. A living lab was established, and the municipality decided to test 2 pilot projects in line with 2 of the EU Food 2030 policy pillars. Food-related events were organised, as well as educational activities dedicated to different audiences, healthy show cooking, training for teachers, and regular distribution of food literacy leaflets. To this end, Funchal has been supported by the University of Madeira, that provided precious know-how in terms of sustainable production, as well as seeds from its seed bank for their educational activity in the allotment gardens. The food literacy activities were also promoted in the social housing districts of the city, with different activities on topics such as prevention of food waste and cooking with surplus, which were distributed among residents to foster a culture of circularity. In some of these social neighbourhoods, composting units were introduced and training was given to all the residents. Thanks to the Food Trails project, the city of Funchal launched its first food strategy, co-designed after a great deal of bottom-up engagement work with local stakeholders and citizens. This is how Food Trails and the city of Funchal are working to define the future of the local food system, making it more environmentally friendly, socially oriented and fair.
So thank you, Andrea. And now I ask to our panelists to join me on stage. So Helen Harrison, Rosalinda Scalia, Natalia Boitot, and Thom Achterbosch, please. And these are, I don't know, is here and here.
Yes.
Yes, Thom, he is very lucky. And so, yeah. I think I know Thom. So, to kickstart a bit our panel for the next 50 minutes, we will start from the city's experience, but because really, as you just heard, it is always let's say, a way to intertwine both how to build stakeholder engagement while implementing effective actions, while keeping the political commitment very high, while providing results to keep everything together, and a monitoring framework that can work for this all together. So the first experience that we want to dig a bit in is the one from Birmingham City Council, because indeed, as Helen will share in a second, they managed to launch their food strategy. And of course, the topic of public health has been huge in Birmingham, and it was translated through also an approach to protein transition. So my question for Helen, of course, is if you can share a bit with us the pathway that you take and why this topic has been such an inspiration in Birmingham, and the results also in terms of what you expect. Thank you, Helen.
Okay, great. Thank you. And thanks for inviting us here today. Having come quite late into Birmingham in the Food Trails project, it's been really fascinating for me to hear about the depth of the learning and the breadth of the work that's been going on here. So thank you all for sharing that today. So I was asked to share why public health is such a key partner in the Food Trails journey. And actually, public health have been involved in Birmingham, have been involved in food transformation for almost 10 years now. And that is because actually we're still asked today why is food transformation a public health problem? Why are you getting involved in it, even after all of these years? The focus of public health traditionally would be on nutrition and weight management programs rather than a whole systems approach to food system transformation. But we know in Birmingham that our food environment drives obesity and unhealthy behaviours, and that contributes to a wide range of disease. No amount of weight management is going to solve that. So we decided a long time ago that we needed to address that with food systems transformation. And whilst health is the key driver for us, the public health team also recognised that they couldn't just focus on the health aspects. They needed to also look at the economy, food justice, sustainability, and also the cultural context of food in our diverse communities. So that's all been part of the food policy approach in Birmingham. The other benefit really for public health being involved in food system transformation is we are actually really well placed as a profession. The public health profession are systems leaders. They're used to dealing with complexity. They're used to using data and evidence to understand the depth and breadth of what's going on within the health of a population and what works to try and address that. We're also very used to coordinating the efforts of society, of our partners in the voluntary sector, in the public sector and private to be able to tackle that. As I said, we've been involved in food system transformation for the past 9 years, and the Food Trails project came at a really important time for us. When the food Trails first came, it helped us to put the food system work firmly on the political agenda and get the buy-in that we needed to move to food policy stage. It also helped us to create that social movement and get people together and behind this work. So during the 4 years that we've had Food Trails in Birmingham, we've been able to gain commitment from our city leaders to include food system transformation within their city's health and well-being strategy. We launched the food system policy, and then we've also launched, from the outcomes of the multiple living labs, we now have a food partnership forum which has political leadership and also 10 key action groups that are delivering different areas of our strategy. We have, of course, also implemented the 3 innovations. So we have the high-rise harvest and the food waste separation project that have been led by our international team. So I can name-check Abdul again and Heather, who have been working on that. And then the public health team, so the food system team within public health led on the full of beans pilot. So most of you will have seen the work we've done on full of beans before, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. But this was focused on, this is a behaviour change campaign to increase supply, demand and consumption of beans and pulses across the city. So it was about achieving a protein shift. So because for us, we know beans and pulses are really nutritious, they're low in fat and salt and sugar, but they're also affordable and applicable to our culturally diverse communities and they're good for the environment. So it aligned well with lots of our different stakeholders. So the problem, though, with this shift was the lack of demand. So the Full of Beans programme was looking at how we could create demand for beans and pulses and focused initially on children and young people. We had an opportunity during the summer of 23 to work with holiday activity clubs, so the intervention was placed there. In terms of the tools, we used the theory of change tool to help us think through what are the key measures that we can look to measure in the longer term, and how do the inputs and activities relate to those outputs and outcomes. And using the behaviour change theory allowed us to forecast what we might see. So in terms of the pilot, so the projects lasted between 1 and 4 weeks, and the intervention included 3 main activities. So it was around growing, tasting and cooking in 70 holiday activity clubs, which supported up to 4,200 children. Now, we did pilot a data collection tool in phase 1, and that has been refined, and we're now looking to roll out the programme using the data collection tool to food businesses and to schools. So I think I'll leave it there because I've probably gone on too long.
Thank you a lot for sharing. And also I think this is really connected also with the activity that Shaleen was also mentioning before, and the input and the teamwork that you had in Birmingham is really showing at this point. And now we kind of move to Central Europe. And indeed, we had the opportunity to involve in this project a capital city as Warsaw, that also had an extremely interesting pathway, because also Natalia is the vice chair of the working group food of Eurocities, so the commitment has aged, and I would say that has aged quite well. And indeed, looking at the work that you did with your living lab, since the beginning of the project, but indeed the commitment was there, has led to developing pilots about food waste, both food waste reduction, but also to make the awareness raising process with specific targets. So I would ask you to share a bit more on that.
Sure, gladly. So maybe I'll start with our motto of the Warsaw Food Lab. It's innovations for the Warsaw food system. And what is our food lab? Because it's not only about awareness, it's also about a specific method of work that we have developed all together with the university as WPS. And here it's very important to state that it's like public authorities working together closely with researchers. And this is actually a platform bringing together very different stakeholders from the business sector, the academic one, also NGOs from the third sector, and obviously our residents. And the idea is to create a space where we can co-design and test innovations, public interventions. And how we do that? Actually, we are basing on very different approaches, but the first one would be this human-centered design. This means that we always have the end user in mind while designing a concrete solution. So we are always in interaction with the target group we have selected. Then we are using systemic thinking, which is very important, and this has appeared many times in the whole Food Trace project and in many EU-led projects. So it means that actually we look at the big picture, and we are trying to understand how every aspect of the system influences the other ones and also influence our target group. Then the mechanism of change. Obviously, I will go back to this a little bit later, but it's about determining what kind of goals we have and how we reach them and how we measure it, right? And what is crucial, it's the multidisciplinary team that we have established. We have a core team of city officers, researchers, for example, professor of public policies, but also designers, design thinking, service design experts, moderators, but also, for example, people who are experts in designing change and also regenerative design. So this is the core team, right? And then on different phases of the process, we bring on also other experts and other knowledge, other perspectives. But what is crucial and what we all lack as cities is the lack of information and data. So for that, we decided that we should obviously conduct empirical field research and base our actions and our pilots on some evidence. And this is here you can see also some of our publications, which were prepared within our food lab. And the last aspect that we use are behavioral insights, because what we are driving for and streaming for, it's the change of our residents, like the change of behavior. It's not only about education and awareness raising, it's about really making the proper choices. So just to show you, it might be a bit overwhelming right now, but like it's a multi-phase process that we have implemented. So the first moment that as a city you have to go through is to redefine what kind of challenge you want to address and who will be your target groups. Then you make some research to understand how your target group is behaving, what are the obstacles that are preventing this target group from behaving properly. For example, not to waste food, right? Once you have the research, you analyze the results and you make some hypotheses. How would I intervene as a city, as a university, to support my target group, my end users? Then we make some prototypes of solutions, always interacting with our end users to see if it's efficient and if it makes sense. And then we test it and we see what kind of results it brings. And now, what we have focused in Warsaw on, it's this food waste prevention and reduction. So that was our key topic. And we selected 2 target groups, small restaurants for one, and also the beneficiary organizations from the food bank on the other hand. And then also we wanted to aim for an institutional change because our method is quite pioneering and innovative, and it can be adapted to very different topics, not only for food. And here, the theory of change with use. So this is a simplified version because, as you can see, we worked on a big tree of with different aspects of our theory of change. So first, for the first group, so here it's the beneficiary organizations receiving food from the food bank. So the challenge was, how can we help these organizations to maximize the use of the donated food, which is highly unpredictable? That's a huge challenge. And so we decided on the activities. The activities are meant to change the behavior, what we can do, so how we can equip these end users, for example, with smart storage system, with concrete knowledge, a clear set of instructions, right? And then it should lead to a lesser amount of food wasted, but also for the staff to develop new habits and new routines that will maximize the use of this food. So that's the first pilot. And the second one, it was about these small restaurators. So here it was about how a city can help them share the surplus food that they prepared. And again, here the activities we developed, it was like equipping them with knowledge. That's the thing, to boost them. And then nudge them with an activity campaign regarding exactly this knowledge, how they can simply share this food in a legal way. Because in Poland, it's a complicated legislation framework, and we could, as a city and as a university, address this aspect. And so our intention was for the restaurators to feel more secure in sharing this surplus food, to feel that they know what options they have exactly, and of course to lead to the reduction of food waste in this way. That's it.
Thank you, Natalia. And yeah. So as you heard, there has been plenty of developing evidence-based approaches in each city. But of course, there was a general maintenance of the scientific approach to implementation and to the selection of indicators, and then, of course, related to data collection in cities. And for that, I would leave the floor to our colleague from Wageningen University and Research to give us a small deep dive into how this work has been shaped in the last 4 years. So, Thom, I would leave the floor to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Thom Achterbosch. I'm a researcher at Wageningen University and Research. And my role in the project has been to be a little bit like that photographer, up high, above, in the helicopter, looking at what all the cities are doing with all their stakeholders and with all their processes that are sometimes difficult to follow, they change all the time. But our job as researchers in the impact evaluation has been to see what is the big picture and where is this heading towards. So we've been working on monitoring outcomes of all the pilot actions and also understanding if all these actions lead to some kind of transformative innovation, an impact on the food system, and so showing signs of where the food system could be leading towards for a better future. And I have a few slides to show you a bit of the outcomes of that process. You've already seen the list of pilots, and I think that for us as researchers, we understand. Actually, for me, this project was so generous in that it allowed us to not take the lead in the processes, but actually be followers. Be working with the cities, working with the practitioners to understand your world and your arenas. And those arenas are pretty dynamic and sensitive to political powers, to changes before and after elections and all that. Changes of positions of food in the municipalities, budget cuts, a few budget increases, I think also, but small ones, yeah, never big enough. So these pilot actions, this looks like a stable list, but this list has been changing all over the project all the time. So how do we monitor that as researchers? It's not easy to be working in this space of practitioners, but rewarding. And what we've tried to impose, or as a process, or suggest as a way of working, is to work with that theory of change and bring in a kind of reflection of what do you want with your innovation, and how does that bring you closer to the goals that you've identified. So in a way, that theory of change is the bridge between a high-level policy vision, and you're very good at that, definitely, writing good stories, good narratives with strong statements of where you want the cities to go. But then what the action, there's sometimes a gap between the sort of breadth of those strategies and the resources that you have to implement them in practice. And the theories of change are there to remind you that whatever you do with your resources should contribute to that bigger goal. And that also you need to use that sort of high-end vision to set priorities. And they are not your priorities only, so you can also develop theories of change in the co-design, working with your stakeholders. And then we are learning from that what your priorities are, and we can draw conclusions from that. We've tried to work with you on indicators, and we have used long lists of indicators from which we and have tried to work with you in connecting those to your policies. And many of the indicators are actually that you selected are about scope. How many activities do we do? How many events do we organize? How many workshops? How many people do we involve? How many pupils do we try to reach in our schools? But not so much about actually the depth of what do we want with that? Do we want to show a big example and then scale it? Or do we rather want a transformative narrative to be developed? So this is something that our discussions have evolved around quite a lot, but it's very difficult to capture that in terms of indicators. And then in terms of the types of processes, is that most of what you have done was self-reporting, self-assessment. We were there, other researchers were there to work with you. I think Warsaw was a bit of a different example there, where you had the researchers working very intensively with the policymakers. And that changes your whole way of working with the data and way of integrating the results of those data into the policy processes. So also there is a kind of a continuum. In the same way that there's a continuum of how advanced you are with your food strategies, there's also a sort of a group of novices and a group of more advanced players in working with data and indicators. And then the impact pathways are the ones that try to help you, remind you that there's a life after food trails where you're still hoping to get an impact. Okay, so we have been tabulating outcomes of the pilots across all the Milan pact goals, and I'll just show a few examples of that. So the first is around the governance. Some of the cities have chosen to position their work with food city councils, food policy councils, so citizen actors and other actors in the food system as a pilot. For them it was new terrain on how to organize meetings with these stakeholders, how to have fruitful discussions around future visions for food policy. And if that's new, then it's an innovation. And those innovations had to be then sort of mirrored on the internal side of the municipalities with interdepartmental coordination. Because if you bring more voices into your food policy decision making, typically you're going to step on other parts of your policy making mandate. So that needs to be mirrored on the inside. And I think that what you see then in food trails is that not everything is cross-cutting. So there are some learnings from some cities on the inside that can be used to strengthen work in food policy councils in other cities. The innovation I think that we've seen here is to integrate those voices. I think that's a little bit something that we know in itself not very innovative, but I think that what we've tried to do is in kind of working with science-based targets and thinking about co-benefits, how you work with multiple goals, with one intervention, I think that could be considered to be an innovation and a path that we've just started. On the area of sustainable diets and nutrition, the main outcomes that we've achieved across a number of pilots in Bergamo, Birmingham, Copenhagen are, first of all, really tangible, practical solutions for sustainable, healthy meals in schools. Just what are the recipes? What are the, how do you allocate that across the week? You need, they come into school 5 days a week, so you need 5 days, a variety of menus. So how do you do that? And those very tangible recipes and solutions are there. Also, how you involve your canteen staff in meeting the sustainability targets around waste prevention or around cooking with pulses or whatever. And then outside the schools and outside of the food service, there's youth engagement, which has been quite successful. We've seen the Pulse proposal. And again, that innovation is there, that you'd convey the science-based targets into actual practices and try to make them not only policy targets, but also KPIs for the kitchen or elsewhere. In terms of social and economic equity, a lot of outcomes are there on citizen engagement and food literacy. And I think some cities have really managed to do mass mobilization of working with food in cities and make it fun. Just have fairs, have interesting events, and then you see that the numbers are rising of how many people come to those events. So some really good examples there. And something that I think is really smart is kind of the pupil-to-parent learning. So you have agency, right? You have children in your schools, and those children can convey messages to their parents. And there's quite some literature on how strong that discussion can be between a child and a parent. So and then with that idea that perhaps there's food in everything. I've been really impressed with the way that cities make smart combinations by allowing initiatives just to put a little bit of food thinking into an exercise that is a summer activity or whatever. Maybe then on food production, I think that here the metropolitan angle was quite interesting to work really strongly from a city-region perspective, and that brings that metropolitan level of thinking how to integrate the food in the cities, which are usually consumers, with the producers around the cities that are typically producing for world markets or national markets. So how to make those connections at a governance level that sometimes doesn't have a lot of power, but maybe good soft power to bring good ideas and systems approaches to the table. So with all that, with all these bits and pieces and sort of small innovations and bigger innovations, so what does that do for the system? What does that do with the system's transformation? Now this is a really hard job for us in the research side then of the project to make a very clear narrative of how we have addressed the co-benefits, how have we tried to reach long-term impact of the project. And I think that the right-hand side diagram is sort of my answer here. We've seen that with cities putting new forms of food governance in place, that is there to stay, as long as there's, of course, there's always funding risk or declining priorities in government, but it's not only in government, it's also with the stakeholders. And the better you organize yourself with your stakeholders around the food departments, the more difficult it will be to get rid of them if political winds change. Food communities, so connections in the cities of citizens with the food policy, with people, and then in a bigger ring around that is how you work with the connections with supply, so around the city. And procurement has been used here extensively as a device for making those connections, and I think some really good examples there to learn from. For me, procurement is a way of changing your food environment. It is a way to change the range of options that people in your city have, and you have the agency to some extent over determining those choices. And I think that then only after you've sort of managed those choices, you could think about changing food behavior in the long term. So what we sometimes see is that we immediately run to citizens or consumers with ideas on how they should change their diets. But actually it's going through this cascade of all these other options before you fundamentally change the choice options in your city. And I think that Food Trails has given some new examples there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Thom. If you want, you can go further to click. Okay, thank you very much. And I think we had many inputs to reflect on. I hope they were inspiring also to hear from outside of the consortium, of course. And I think that now we have a great opportunity to hear also from the institutional body that actually led the framework that also brought this project to life. And indeed, the big question actually for Mrs. Scalia is about what opportunity do you see in the role of cities, not just as decision makers for their own communities in any kind of participatory approach, but also in this dialogue that we have developed in this project with the researchers, but also with this evidence-based approach, and possibly if you can share also how did Food 2030 led this. Thank you.
Thank you, Elisa. Good afternoon, everyone. So, my name is Rosalinda Scalia, and I'm Deputy Head of Unit in the Directorate General that deals with research and innovation. And the name of my unit is Bioeconomy and Food Systems. So, just to spell it out, yes, to spell it out, because bioeconomy it's a big approach encompassing different sectors, and food systems are part of this big approach. So. This is why inside our institution we are in charge of Food 2030, which is not, if you allow me, an agenda, but it's really the research and innovation framework for this change to happen in the ground. So we provide funding to member states thanks to the tools that we have under Horizon Europe and specifically under Cluster 6 of Horizon Europe. And we had built this community under Food 2030, of which Food Trials is a very good example. It is a successful project. It's an innovation action. So I was curious from the beginning to learn more about Food Trials because I'm quite new in this position. I started in January, and while I was very much aware of the programming side of Cluster 6, I was not aware of these changes in the field that are really happening and that are surprising me day by day. So thanks to Food Trials for this, and thanks for being part of a bigger family. We intend to, I see more opportunities like the Food Trials one. I see that there are many based place solutions that need to be further developed, but you can be a good example that can be replicated. And our interest is not to have only local based solutions, but to expand perhaps the scope of this local approach to a more regional approach when possible, and to go also global when the challenges are the same. So we have to follow the whole approach. For example, we also developed in my unit the approach for regional innovation valleys for bioeconomy and food systems, because I think that the key word here is innovation. And there are many ways for implementing innovation on the ground. You are one of the more creative example of innovation with engaging with communities, and there are other examples that can be put in place. So I will invite you also later on to see at the different instruments that we have that can be exploited further and explored further. So this Living Lab approach can be really a successful approach, and we want to use it not only for under Food 2030 classical projects, but we want to use it also under the mission soils projects, because you might be aware that the mission soil, the healthy soils are at the base of food production, so they are dear to our heart. And we published in April a new work program for the mission soil. You still have few days if you want to apply, because the deadline is the 8th of October. And there is another instrument that we have to develop further, this Living Lab approach, this bottom-up research approach. So just to expand a bit on the different instruments that we have. And yes, Food 2030 is being successful, and there is life after Food 2030, hopefully. So we are already developing our thinking for the future. We have the last years of Horizon Europe to be implemented until 2027. Food 2030 projects will still be alive in the territories, but we have to look ahead under the, with new lens, new political lenses, because the new commission is going to take duty hopefully in December, according to the last information that we have. And through new political lens, we have to continue developing what is dear to our heart, the healthiness of our soils, of the food systems, and the engaging with the society entirely. So I hope that these elements can be useful in this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you a lot. Linda, I think that it's it's great to hear the position, of course, of you and representing the DG, because of course the journey of these people that actually tried and implemented the actions in the city, that tried and lost their nights to have data from the cities, which are the researchers, and all the environment of organizations that collaborated. We're also keen to hear if this is a work that is still being developed, also from the institutional perspective here in Brussels, and it's great to hear that we will keep collaborating. And actually, I would like to steal 1 minute from our panelists, because we have plenty of cities that participated in the project, and actually, I would like to ask a very brief contribution also from a colleague from the city of Bergamo, that is Nadia Tonoli, to hear in a nutshell also what happened, for example, in Bergamo.
Thank you, Elisa. Thanks to Food Trace Project and our living labs in Bergamo, we have changed our school canteens. We have increased in the last school canteens procurement. We have increased the number of the quantity of local and organic food, and also we change our menus. We introduce every week one vegan menu named Green Menu. With this change, we support this changement with our whole school approach, because we propose training for teachers, school canteens committees, students, and parents. And also, in the last May, we launched this green menu for bar and restaurants, because Bergamo want to improve our kind of green menu also for bar, restaurants, and other canteens. Thank you. Very quickly.
Thank you, Nadia. And I don't know if also our colleague from Groningen wants to pitch in just in a minute about the experience, because we have still some time, and then I will go back for a final take to our panelists. But I will pass the floor to Renske from the city of Groningen.
Yes. Thank you very much. Yes, well, Groningen. We already did a lot on food. We were the first city in the Netherlands who had a food policy, actually, which was created in 2012, thanks to, I'm not sure who said it, thanks to one enthusiastic colleague, actually, who just was so driven that she got this policy around. But now we've just, and my colleague is here next to me, Hilde, and she wrote the new policy, which has been, well, when was it?
In June.
In June, yeah. So we have a new policy centered around protein transition. And, and the work hasn't finished, of course, because we're still, well, I would say we're not only just beginning, but there's still a lot of work to do, as we have heard today. There's heaps of work to do. But I think a lot of the groundwork was laid by this project, by the chances that this project and this network gave us in Groningen. We have now a department with 4 young, well, mostly women actually, yes, women, 4 women, working hard on food protein transition. And we have an alderman, a politician, who is focused to get things done in Groningen. So I would say it has been a pleasure here, this project. And we've been submitting a new project, another European call, of course. So yeah, the work is still going on. And today, well, we heard a lot about what still needs to be done, the whole system change and everything. So we're quite humble, but trying to do our best and trying to do our bit, like all the other cities in food trails. Thank you.
Thank you, Renske, and thank you all really for sharing. So maybe just to wrap up and to be on time, and we hope that also the other panel will be on time so that everybody can have a coffee before the day end. And also because the very last piece of this day will be a small contribution from all of you. So we will be speaking a bit more directly. But yeah, maybe the very last question that I would do to Birmingham and to Warsaw and also to Thom is about if you have a message that you want to share as this collaboration between city, so these decision makers, but also practitioners and the research community. So one last take on this, and then I think if we have time, I would ask a very last question to Rosalinda. But please, Helen.
Thank you. So I think for us, it's changed our relationship with academia and how we work with them. So whereas before we would probably go off, design an intervention, deliver it, and then halfway through, commission an academic partner and say, come and help us evaluate this project. And actually they'd be there, well, you haven't collected this data, we don't have a baseline, you haven't controlled for these variables. So now we're much more likely to be involving academia at that very early planning stage and getting them to challenge us on thinking about, will the intervention actually lead to the outcomes? What outcomes do you need to measure and what data do you need to collect on the way? Through the food forum that's come out of the Living Labs, we've got really good partnerships with our local academic institutions. We're very lucky that we've got 5 major universities in Birmingham, and a number of them have got an interest in food systems. So we've been working really closely with them to bridge the research and practice. And actually the food team have got a whole list of research questions that have come up through their work that they need support answering. And that's led to PhD projects. It's led to additional research grants being achieved. So it has fundamentally changed really how we work with academia, and much for the better as well.
Thank you, Helen. Very interesting to hear this. Yeah, maybe Natalia, and then...
So from our perspective, I think that it was really a game changer to work together with the researcher as a core team. I say it helps structurize your thinking, but also really define properly what the challenges are, who is responsible for what, and how to measure it, and define the right indicators, which is key. And for example, also conduct afterwards monitoring of the implementation of your pilot. For example, regarding these organizations, we help with the smart storage and clear instructions. We got the answer from 77 organizations in Warsaw that are interested in implementing it, right? So that shows the need for it, because we are also researched what are concretely the needs of our target groups. But also what I wanted to add, and I think that most of cities can refer, for us one of the challenges was regarding the innovative public procurement aspect. And this was also a very interesting aspect to show that we will have a prototype, which we don't know yet what it will be because it's in a phase of a process. How do we handle this within our public administrations, which might not be always very flexible regarding these aspects. So this was also very interesting to work on prototypes and testing prototypes that are models, not the final solutions yet. Right, so it's also blueprint for further implementations. So, but I would definitely recommend like using these kind of models as we have developed in Warsaw, because, yeah, this is such an added value, and to bring together on board different perspectives and knowledge and levels of expertise, this changes completely the efficiency of the public interventions you design.
Thom, if you have something to add to that.
Well, I think I would like to say something about, well, first of all, how rewarding it is as a researcher to be in the urban space. So I mean, I think I've already said a few things about that. I think that to work better in a tandem between research and cities can be very beneficial, but it requires adjustments from both sides. I can tell you that the amount of time that we've invested into getting to know the cities, getting to understand the processes, is a bit of a trade-off with how some of the researchers work. So if you want to work alone and fast for a high-level publication, then the city space is kind of daunting, I will tell you. I'm not necessarily in that area because for me, it's mostly about impact. So you need to find the right researchers to engage with you in your city. But also, I think that there's a lot of truth in sort of breaking the silos here and thinking like, what are the main changes that we want to see over time in our cities? And let's get the data in, because the data will tell you if what you're doing is right, if what you're doing is having an impact and is actually changing for the better. So please also invest in, probably in a joint discussion, to go to our funders, to go to make the choices, also to not always go for the most sexy innovation, but just for simple data collection, data curation, and monitoring over time. Thank you.
Thank you, Thom. And I think that you have the honor also to for the last contribution of this session. And actually, at this point, of course, the question is if we all kind of agree, I hope, that food trace has been a good practice in terms of collaboration and establishment of a connection between different kind of actors contributing to the same goals in the end, then is there a possibility from your perspective to replicate, and also if it is of interest for you?
Sure, I said it already before because I could not help myself in being so optimistic. And there will be many ways for replicating this success. First of all, I was really surprised by these synergies between academia and local authorities. That can be a new way for doing research. So if this has been proved to be successful, it should be replicated in different scenarios with different tools. Maybe I was mentioning the Mission Soil before. This Mission Soil will have an important event here in Brussels in November, 11 and 12 and 13 November, sorry. So you can also participate to learn more about a different community that will use the same approach of living labs, for example. Then another way of replicating this success can be in the framework of the food system partnership, because I'm here also to provide you all the relevant possibilities and tools that we can use. And the partnership for food systems was presented in Dijon this year. And one work package will be dedicated to living labs. So there are opportunities there And we invite you to cooperate and to share your results, of course, to take advantage of all the results of the Food 2030 family. With all this in mind, I invite you to project yourself to the future. The future has been set somehow also in some recent policy reports that were partially mentioned this morning. The Draghi report was not mentioned, but I can mention it now because it looks into productivity. It looks into boosting SMEs and the EU sectors, including the food sector. And we need to turn productivity into prosperity for everyone, for citizens, for communities. This should be our interest and our long-term passion and objective. So thank you so much.
Thank you to all our panelists. Actually, we've been so good that we still have 1 minute before coffee. So if someone has a question or like a burning one, you are welcome to do so. Otherwise, you have all the next 15 minutes to pose the question directly to the panelists. Let me know. Otherwise, I will exploit this last minute to explain you again what we are going to do as a closing moment for the day, which I will do maybe. Yeah. So the idea, the whole day has been extremely inspiring. I tried to listen to everything that has been said, even with an external ear, yeah. But of course, there are many people in this room and upstairs that were not in the implementation of the project, or they were partially involved. So now it's time to discuss a bit. We thought of organizing a moment of sharing in smaller groups. That's why, again, the setting changed a bit in the rooms. We made it based on topics, but it's really a moment to explain, possibly to make questions to our cities, because, again, city officers will be at the tables to share about multi-level governance, about living labs, stakeholders' involvement, food policies, but also data collection and indicators implementation, and about the roadmap, of course. So that's going to happen here and upstairs. The groups are twins, so we have the same here and upstairs for around an hour after the coffee. And then we just wrap up and make our conclusion of the day. So thank you all, and see you in 15 minutes here or upstairs, wherever you fit.